I'm particularly happy to be here today. First of all, because of the importance of this event, and second, because of the relevance of the topics we are discussing today to the very nature of the institution I represent, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which I shall call EBRD from now on, and to what it does. The history of the EBRD is about change and innovation, and we shall see how. But let me start off by saying a bit about the EBRD. What is the EBRD? The EBRD was set up in 1991 to contribute to the process of transition from central planning to market-based economies in countries ranging from Central Europe to Central Asia. Last year, in the aftermath of what was called the Arab Spring, our shareholders asked us to widen the spectrum of our activities and cover 4 countries in the southern Mediterranean region: Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, and Jordan. The institution is owned by 65 shareholders, 63 countries, and 2 international institutions, the European Union and the European Investment Bank, and has a capital base of 30 billion euros and a AAA rating, something of a scarce commodity these days. What are our objectives? As I said, we try to promote transition to market economies in our countries of operations, and what the bank does is to help building a market economy through the incremental contribution of its individual projects to the process. And this involves a profound transformation of the way resources are allocated in the economy. Of course, private ownership is the quintessential institution of a market economy. Increased private ownership results from either privatizations, which was very relevant in the 90s, to the production of goods and services, to the new production of goods and services, for instance, by the emergence of new small and medium-sized enterprises, or the participation of the private sector in the provision of infrastructure services and so on. I already boasted the AAA of the EBRD. Let me say that the bank invested over 75 billion euros since its inception. What is remarkable here is that every euro invested by the EBRD typically attracts on average 2.6 euros of private investment. So a rapid calculation would take you to 280 billion euros invested in the region in the 21 years of activity of the bank. We finance a diverse range of enterprises, and we are active in practically all the sectors of an economy. As you can see, the share of the financial institution sector is much larger than the others, because a sound and well-functioning financial sector is at the heart of a well-functioning market economy. So it's one of our primary objectives. This gives you optically an idea of where we operate. It's a vast area, and you can see the 4 southern Mediterranean countries represented here on the map. We use loans and equity. Again, the EBRD is a public institution, but it operates as a typical private investment bank and uses all the range of instruments of a private investment bank. So all kinds of loans and equity are instruments. We invest in banks and non-bank financial institutions like insurance companies and leasing companies. We do direct equity investments in agribusiness, manufacturing, services, natural resources, a number of sectors. And we have committed over 3 billion euros to 140 funds with total capital in excess of 15 billion euros. which have invested in roughly 1,200 companies in our region. Now, the subject matter of today's meeting is innovation. So what is innovation? We are these days asking ourselves whether we should give prominence to objectives which do not obviously fall into the category of transition, into our concept of transition. I'm thinking of sectors like healthcare, education, social inclusion, which are not direct objectives of the activity of the bank. We start from the idea that innovation is not only something new to the world, but it's something new to a sector, to an economy, to a country. And there is much to do in this respect in many of our existing countries' operations. What is key to innovation is a well-functioning financial sector. Of course, innovation has a crucial impact on corporate performance, and this effect is mediated through financial markets. That's why, again, one of the main sectors of activity for the bank is the financial sector, and that's why, for instance, after the financial crisis of 2008, together with other international financial institutions, we have launched an initiative to develop local currency, local capital markets in our countries of operations. And this is to address the systemic issues, the systemic risks stemming from dollarization of many economies and excessive dependence on foreign funding, two transmission channels through which the crisis was imported, let's say, from our countries' operations. Now, of course, one important driver of growth is the knowledge economy. And we are now trying to focus more than in the past on the development of a knowledge economy. And there are several challenges to do that. For instance, there's a lack of top-tier research institutes in our countries, and on average, of course, this varies from country to country, but expenditure on research and development is less than half the world average. And there is scarce supply of high-skilled labor. Another constraint is there's no ad hoc policy, I would say, to develop the knowledge industry, with two major features. First, there are no financial incentives to invest in the sectors, and an insufficient legal and enforcement framework, especially in terms of intellectual property laws. Far from establishing a causal relationship between these two elements, I would say that the consequence of this situation is that there is limited or no activity at all in global on the part of global high-tech players, which would have beneficial spillover effects in terms of bringing high-standard technology methods. That's the situation we are operating in, and this is, of course, in general. There are differences between countries, of course. But there's a lack of risk fund facilities, and hardly any classic venture capital players and private investors are active in this sector. So, as I said, we have a vast array of instruments. I picked two examples here of our products. And one is the Venture Capital Investment Program, and I picked this one because of our effort in trying to finance the knowledge economy. The Venture Capital Investment Program was launched 1 year ago, and its aim is equity investments into technology sector companies having high-risk, high-return investment cases. It's a $100 million facility, and it's aimed at investing in 10, 15 companies, so investments of up to $10 million. over a 4-year investment period, which is a rather long tenor for this kind of investments. The EBRD, as it's customary for the institution, takes minority stakes here between 10 and 35%. And the team has already screened roughly 200 companies, and I know that they are in the process of drafting a short list of the most promising ones. So we hope to see the results quite soon. The sectors covered by the Venture Capital Investment Program is what you see, high-tech sectors, semiconductors, ICT, mobility, media, clean tech. So fingers crossed we should see results soon. The second example I picked is the local enterprise facility. This is an instrument of which I'm particularly proud. This was developed in 2006 by the EBRD and Italy. So it was born as a bilateral facility financed by Italy and started operating in the Western Balkans, a particularly difficult region. Today it started with 30 million euros, 20 provided by the EBRD and 10 by the Italian government, and 2 million in technical assistance money, again provided by Italy. Today, after several replenishments, is a facility of 400 million euros, and again 11 million euro for TC provided by Italy. Between 2006 and 2012, 192 million have been committed, and 89 transactions have been realized, which doesn't sound impressive prima facie. But I would say that in the Western Balkans, markets are small. In some cases, there can be only between 50 and 100 businesses that would support a LEF project of even modest dimensions, let's say 3 to 4 million euros. And this is something that testifies to the success of the formula. Success which is reflected also in the geographical coverage of this facility. Again, it started in the Western Balkans. It was successively extended to Romania and Bulgaria, and then to Turkey. And the objective is to perhaps extend it to all our countries' operations, because it's an extremely successful formula. Here, the role of Italy was crucial, because the facility can take up risks that the bank would not take itself. Thanks to a risk mitigation mechanism, Italy is providing subordinated capital, which acts as a first loss guarantee. So lowers the risk profile of investments, which would otherwise be really excessive even for the BRD. The objectives here, the eligible investments are small and very small local companies in the countries for all sort of restructuring, acquisition, or whatever. What is relevant here is to say that although the size of investments is between 1 and 10 million euros, the average size of transactions has remained small at 2.9 million euro. Again, we take minority stakes, and there's a long tenor for this kind of operation, 3 to 8 years for equity investments and up to 10 years for debt financing. What is important to say here is that there's no comparable source of equity finance in the region, in the Western Balkans in particular, and our debt operations differ from local market practice by providing longer tenors, grace periods, and reflection of underlying business drivers, rather than asking for collateral cover. Again, as I said, the hope is that LEF will be expanded to the whole number of our countries' operations. The model is successful, and we are trying to replicate that. So I hope he will come to the region, to Russia and Eurasia soon. Thank you very much.